just fall into place. But at the moment, I get what we're trying to do, but it's making sure that we're making the best of the time is the challenge.
Yeah, and listen, apologies again for not being able to be there. It's just unfortunate, but I think so long as we're clear about what the outcome is that we're looking for, then that gives you kind of half a chance, doesn't it? Yeah.
But I mean, so we're saying whether we're, you know, the racy thing, as I call it, you know, responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed, and so from that, just say we do disagree with something wholeheartedly and all the rest of it, and when, how will that information be used then, that we're saying as a development bunch, you know, we're not responsible, you know, we can't be held responsible for that, or yeah, it's making sure people are, you know, are clear on those aside, you know, what the implications of it are. That's all.
So in terms of the conversation that you're hoping to have tomorrow, is the purpose of that to try and agree the content of the RACI matrix, or is it a broader conversation about its purpose, how useful it might be in a development environment or not, or what's the outcome?
To be honest, David, right, it's 45 minutes.
Yeah.
George is going to introduce for 5 minutes, which we know will be 10. But no, we have to be realistic. Yeah. Then, as I say, that we're going to have new people, hopefully some walk-ins. So that's going to take. It's very, very little time. The purpose of the exercise, if you like, is twofold. It's to showcase what we're doing and our risk-based approach to doing it. And you know, hopefully through some coverage, getting some more members and some more buy-in to our approach. In terms of the actual output of the meeting, it's going to be an input rather than an output. It's going to be an input into this is a roundtable that is following through from pre-sessions to this point. Yeah. And what that roundtable has won't be a final output. Nothing we do is a final output. It's always moving. It's always changing. It's always getting more information, isn't it?
Okay.
So the final output is input.
Okay. I'm conscious that there might be some new people at the meeting here that certainly I've never met before. I'm wondering if it'd be worth doing some introductions.
Sure. Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. So I certainly don't know Mark, Christine, or Pauline, but I'm Dave Pote. I work for Notting Hill Genesis, and for a while now I've been chairing this development group with Paul's support. So Paul, do you want to introduce yourself? Does everyone know Paul?
I think I've been on another group recently, but recognise one or two names. But my name's Paul White. I'm the Housing Development Manager at Enfield Council.
Okay. Christine?
Hi, I'm Chris Milling. I'm from L&Q. I'm a data design analyst, actually, so I'm just interested in all the data which we might need to capture for our assets and where they come along.
Actually, now you've put your camera on, Christine. I recognise you. I think you've been in a group before. Hi. Pauline?
Yeah, hi, I'm Pauline. I also work for
Pauline.
Yeah,
everything becomes familiar. Hi, hi again.
Indeed.
Hi.
So Mark, you're the only one left to surprise us.
Indeed, and you don't know me, so there you go. That's a new thing. Apologies, I'm also on my phone rather than my laptop, which is why my camera wasn't particularly on, and I'll send it back up again.
Sorry.
So I've jumped in. So you've had representation before from Citizen Housing Group, Midlands based, and I know Richard is certainly on the distribution list still, but I'm a land manager, so new business as a day job, and I've been given responsibility for sort of sitting in on this forum and trying to get the best from it from our perspective in terms of both feeding in and also, I guess, getting out how we can utilise BIM better from citizens' perspective. So yeah, no, I'm new to this. Haven't been on any of these other groups or forums before, so yeah, I am a new face to you.
All right, Mark, no, welcome. Nice to see you. So I think the primary purpose of this morning's meeting is really to prepare for the event that's happening tomorrow, which is the Digital Construction Week event. As Richard's saying, we're looking to showcase what the BIM4Housing groups are doing. Is everyone up to speed with the various email exchanges, or is it worth explaining where we've got it to, Richard?
Well, yeah, possibly. just as a brief background, we've got 5 tables at Digital Construction Week tomorrow morning, for 5 working groups, of which development is one, to hold a live roundtable event. We've held many roundtable events, but they've all been online, for 45 minutes. Now, it's a very short time, so there's only a certain amount we can realistically get done, particularly since we'll be expecting walk-ins who will know very little about what's going on, really. So it's a question of showcasing what we're doing, how we think, our risk-based approach to these issues, and to hopefully spread the word out to the wider industry, and maybe get a few more people on board. To that end, we've gone through a process for the last 4 weeks, where when we first realised the UK BIM Alliance had given us these tables. We've gone through a process to decide the best sort of methodology that we can actually do something useful, but at the same time showcase, as I say, what we're actually doing. So we've got a template of what we're doing, and we've got a number of templates that at the most basic level need approval, yes or no. Do you agree with this, yes or no? But that can be, is it better to start rather than
well yes, but the one thing, Richard, that I'm thinking about my approach. If whether it's me that just says, right then, folks, it's the 2 tabs on each of those templates. You've got compromise and you've got information, haven't you? One of them is what can go wrong, and the other one is what information do we need from people to stop that from happening. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I just want to clarify how the process will work.
Have the rest of the guys on this call seen those matrices?
No, this is what I'm going to do. What I'm going to suggest, Paul, is that we go through it as though this is the meeting. Okay. Yeah. If you have on your screen, if you've got up for yourself, Paul, my email.
Yeah.
That I sent this morning. Yeah. If I share the documents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I can come to you for like the building characteristics. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So again, just by way of background for people that haven't been involved in the detail, one of the approaches that the BIM4Housing group have taken is that they've established a number of round tables, and those round tables have been made up of a whole range of people, be they suppliers, be they contractors, be they clients, and they've looked at the individual components that kind of make up kind of fire safety systems. So AOV systems, fire doors, sprinklers, those sorts of things. And there've been a number of outputs from those round tables. One of those things that's emerged is a RACI matrix, which I think Paul's just about to share with us, that starts to try and map what people's responsibilities and accountabilities are in relation to some of the risks surrounding those components. And I think the suggestion is that this is going to form the content, if you like, that we can have a conversation around tomorrow at the conference. Is that a fair bit of background to that, Richard?
That's very good.
Yeah. Okay.
We might need a little bit of a template to explain what RACI is. Well, I think most people kind of know, but I can
Yeah,
forgive
it's got
them
it.
or
It's got
not.
it on the top actually of the
Yeah.
spreadsheet. So so shall I share the first slide then, Paul, and then where is it?
So in terms of on the day, will this be done digitally or will it be done paper based?
It's paper. They'll on the table will be a paper plan of the. Sorry, I'm trying to find the thing.
Sorry,
a paper floor plan of a floor of a apartment building.
Okay.
Now that floor plan, which I'm trying to find, and I thought I'd open, but I clearly haven't.
Yeah, I'm wondering how that's precisely used. I think.
Let me find the floor plan. Sorry, it should be on here, but it's not.
You didn't leave it on the beach, did you?
No, no. Right, here we go. Right, there we go. Let me share my screen, and then you can see the floor plan. Share up here. There. Can you see the floor plan?
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Right. So this is the idea. This is the floor of the building, and the scenario is that a fire breaks out in one of the bedrooms. Now, the characteristics of the building are, Paul, have you got those?
Yes.
Do you want to read out the characteristics of the building?
Oh, hang on. Characteristics of the building. I thought you meant the plan itself. Oh, sorry. Oh, blimey. What, in your email?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Hold on.
The building is over 18 meters high. That's it, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. The student urban living accommodation. Single phase evacuation. 3 basic types of accommodation units: twin bedroom unit, standard bedsit unit, and a disability bedsit unit. It's mechanically heated and ventilated through the corridor distribution. Alternative means of escape is available through distributed staircase. A firefighting shaft is provided. An automatic opening vent, AOV or mechanical smoke ventilation is provided. And you've got dry and wet risers provided too.
Great. So then the first task is to look at the diagram, the floor plan, and decide which asset types would be relevant to preventing the spread of smoke. As in, I suppose, the compartmentalization needed for the spread of, to prevent the spread of smoke in that bedroom.
Okay.
So they're going to dampers and smoke seals.
Yeah. So we've obviously predetermined those, and we've sent. Let me open this up. This is for fire alarms. Yeah, we've got 6 of these documents, one for each of the asset types we've identified. So this is the first one. This is on what compromises fire alarm and fire detector systems that could stop the compartment, could stop them working properly. Right, the first thing, and the RACI, on each of these statements, these risks, there is, you can see along the top, which stakeholder group, is your developer, and then the AC, which is about responsibility, accountability, consulted or informed. So which stakeholder group, for example, incorrect installation design is a risk identified for fire alarm and fire detector systems. And we've got the client, the developer, would be informed The designer would be responsible for that. The main contractor would be accountable for that. And trade contractor, manufacturer, supplier, operator would be consulted on that. So for this particular one, would the group agree that for you, your only responsibility is to be informed?
Can I just ask who put this together?
A number of people. I wasn't involved in this. I'm not knowledgeable enough, David. But there were a number of people involved in it.
It was a multitask group.
Oh yeah, very much.
Multidiscipline group. Yeah, okay.
Very much so. Yeah, there were 4 or 5 people involved.
Well, this is what I mean about going through each one of those in 45 minutes. You know, and going that's we can only concentrate on one asset type, I think.
Well, what I told you, what I said to George this morning was because I thought we were just concentrating on information. He said no. He said no. We need the compromise tab done as well, because that gives us the context, which is absolutely right.
Yeah, so you've got two scenarios on each of those. So you've got 10 tabs to go through.
Yeah. Well, let me finish. What I said to George was, well, we're going to actually do the meeting, have a run through as though it's the meeting in the development group, and I'll tell you how many asset types we get through. Yeah, because I personally don't think there's a catch chance in hell that we're going to get through.
No, there's not.
I don't think you'd get through the first page.
I think we're gonna, yeah, because it'll take us a while to keep explaining to people and get us all in the right, really focused. That'll take 10 minutes.
Paul, I absolutely agree. The thing, this is why George has been sending all this out, because the idea is that people are briefed when they come into the meeting. Now, to be honest, with the roundtables we've done, that's had mixed results. And sometimes we've been very, very surprised. And everybody's come into that meeting and they've known exactly where we were coming from, what they were talking about, and it was yes, no. Yeah. Now, other times, half the meeting is and half the meeting isn't. And other times, nobody's looked at anything. So it's a small group. It's going to be 6 or 7 people. So there's a good chance, given the people that are involved are generally very focused. Yeah, if there's stuff to do in background before a meeting, they generally do it. Yeah,
Christine, you've put your hand up. Have you got something to say?
Yeah, no, it's the first time I've seen this matrix. It does seem like there's lots of detail. Again, if you've only got 45 minutes and that gets cut down because George has given a 10-minute intro. I mean, if you're looking for information to mitigate risk, although you might want everyone on from designer on not involved, you might want to just focus on what the developers need to do, focus on what they're accountable for, and then say, if you're accountable for something, what information would you want to make either reduce that risk or get rid of it? Because then, because you're saying you're going to be held responsible. So if there's something where you think you should be accountable and you're not, or somebody else should be, then you can correct it. But if you are accountable, how are you going to get that risk down as much as possible? And I think if that is your focus, then you can be very specific. And I think that might help.
And that's absolutely what we're intending. The only reason I went through everyone on the first line was just to explain to people what RACI was if they didn't know.
Okay.
So what we would be looking at in the developer column would be, as Christine said, accountable, but primarily accountable and responsible.
So we're trying to narrow this down, that for the purposes of the group tomorrow, you want us to be the client developer and you want us to comment on the RAs, Cs and Is in our column only.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was always just that column, but even
sorry,
then,
I just said that. I was just explaining what RACI was. That's why I went through that.
Yeah, but even then, it's just that column, and but there's still lots of items per tab, isn't there? And
Yeah.
yeah,
But with my development hat on though, I've also got a view on the other columns. In the sense that I'm not understanding who the designer is in this context. So is this the so in
procurement?
in my world, we tend to operate in a design and build environment most of the time. So this might mean something different to me, to a developer that maybe does things more traditionally. So the role of the designer, might look quite different. In the same way that I'm not understanding the difference necessarily between the role of the manufacturer and the role of the supplier. I understand that there could be a difference. And then, the operator and the commissioner, well, who are they? Is this assuming that you've got a different person operating the building than the client that's instructed in the first? So don't want to get into that detail, but in my head, there are already questions about understanding what the matrix is trying to say.
Yeah.
Before we get into the detail of who's doing what.
That's a great point, because I've just thought we just can only focus on that column. We've only got, so I've been thinking very, very kind of blinkered, in terms of getting anything done. And then, but you're right, David. That's we'll just have to explain that this is most of us are housing associations and local authorities and developers from a point of view of affordable housing, and we use design and build contracts invariably.
So the session probably just needs that quick context, doesn't it? So,
yeah.
People understand that we're just looking at that first column and it's in the context of a design and build type scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent point.
All right.
That's all we can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I guess as you say, Richard, what you try. So okay, take a step back. In terms of the people that are going to be around the table, some people might have been involved in this process, but I sense in terms of the people that are on this call, nobody on this call has been on that process, and I suspect some of the people on this call might be round the table tomorrow. So what I'm trying to understand is how many people round the table do we know, and we know what knowledge they come to the table with.
Well, we know they're not. Can you get hold of the list of attendees for tomorrow?
Yeah, sure.
So we know who's going to be at the table with
Absolutely,
Paul,
yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, Paul, you've got that, haven't you?
I haven't got it in front of me, but there was there was a profile. There was a biog sent around. Yeah.
Okay. And those people have been primed for this conversation?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. Everything that Paul has had, except for my email, everything that Paul has had has gone.
Yeah, we established that last night.
I have posted that in the chat. We're coming to the development.
Where is it in the chat?
In the chat.
Richard, you did say to me yesterday that these are all these people will be, fully briefed, and don't worry that they'll know what they're doing.
Let me just say who's in there. There's obviously yourself, Paul, Neville, who's from Southampton City Council, Scott Sanderson.
Yes, Scott's here.
He led roundtables for us. Claire Williams from Hackney, also very switched on. Asif Mirza from Berkeley, again. These are all people who will be very thoroughly briefed.
Okay. Good morning, Scott, by the way. Nice to see you. Okay. Oh, hello. Okay.
Oh, there he is.
Right, so am I still sharing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that's basically where we are. So we need to go through this with given Paul's introduction and go through this, looking at the client developer column to see, firstly, do we agree with these? Do we agree with these RACI classifications?
Okay. Do you want to run down them then?
Yeah. So if we look at lack of weekly, sorry.
Hang on a minute. You've gone past the first one.
Right, incorrect initial design. We've got that requires you to be informed.
So I think, as the client developer, I think we're consulted. I don't think we're just informed.
Okay.
I think we're part of the process.
Okay.
I mean, it's just my view, just to throw it out there.
Okay.
Yeah, indeed. From what, and this component is again, sorry, this asset type.
Incorrect initial design.
No. What's the asset type? Is it fire?
Sorry, fire alarm and fire detector system.
Yeah, I guess we have ERs, don't we, David? So we kind of have that process in input, don't we?
Yeah, we do ERs and we do design reviews against those ERs.
Yeah, indeed, to make sure they comply or whether we accept them or not. Any variances, yeah.
So we just don't receive information. There is a consultation process.
Right. Okay. So that needs So we would make a note to change that. Or we input into the.
And I think what we're trying to do here is mimic the conversation that might happen tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah. But also get your group's real input as well. Okay.
All right.
But yeah, no, I agree with that as well. And we're quite often, certainly in my previous role at Bromford, and then at Citizen, we'd have internal fire risk assessors who'd be part of that conversation as well for this sort of block.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one, lack of weekly user tests. We've got that down that you would be accountable for that.
You see, so as the client that operates the building, yes, I agree. But in terms of the initial client as the developer, absolutely not at all.
Then you see that I see where you're coming from that, because if we're stripping out operations as separate from development, then development obviously hands over pre-operations, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we wouldn't get involved in weekly user tests. We test the system before it's handed over. Certainly get involved.
Yeah, and we need to inform people that this is what's in there and what's required. Although they probably
sure, yeah.
But this is purely from a development perspective. That's how I'm trying to look at it as, separating that out from everything else. Yeah, you have to look at everything from that point of view, not from the operations side.
Yeah. So the accountable person for me is the operator in this situation, not the client.
Right, let me make a note of this. Why is that done at X? Why is that done at X, Jess?
I think in that context, I think it's an interesting point and a valid point that client/developer equally could have client/operator.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Because I think the client piece is a little bit confusing in this context.
So what you're saying is actually, it's, rather than alter each letter, each ranking, it's better to redefine the heading.
Well, I think the client sits in at least two positions on that in the columns B to I.
Yeah.
And with some of those headings where you've got lack of weekly tests, so essentially you want to identify that you need weekly tests or whatever other activities need to be carried out, but you don't want to be accountable for the lack of tests.
Yeah, but I think in the context of managing risk, I think it's important that there are two columns, because within a client organization, there will be those divisions of responsibility. So I think within certainly the organizations that we'll be talking to, there will be a separate development function and a separate operational function. So I think the risk of combining them is it becomes unclear. I think you need that.
Yeah, I think development. Yeah, I think it's good to sort of properly establish developments.
Yeah.
Someone's
put their hand up.
Sorry.
Someone's put their hand up. I can't see who it is.
Oh, yeah, so it's me, Pauline. I'm not actually in development. I'm on the operations side.
Yeah.
So I would agree about the user testing, whatever the period is, would be done on the operational side. But we would expect the commissioning to have been done on the development side. So I wonder if we need to bring commissioning in somewhere there instead.
We've got commissioning in.
Oh, is that further down?
Yeah, it's further along to the right.
Oh, okay.
So when that says commissioner in column I, that's not someone sat in a lobby with a nice hat on, right?
No, it should say commissioning, shouldn't it? Should it?
No, aren't we defining between commissioner, which is the person who undertakes the commissioning? So commissioner is a role, but commissioning is a event.
Right. Okay. Well, either or. That commissioner is going to be doing the commissioning.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess the challenge is sometimes that's a separate organisation. Sometimes it's part of the main contractor organisation. Sometimes it's part of the trade contract organisation. So I guess it's shown separately to make sure it's recognised as a kind of separate task or a separate group of people who carry some responsibility.
Well, I suppose the thing is, if the developer is going to be the operator, then he's got two columns, hasn't he? He's got the column, the operator column. If he's just doing the development and then handing over, then he's just in one column.
Yeah. No.
So if you're a developer who is going to operate as well, then you're not information, you are I, but you're also C for the first question. So as you said, David, you will be consulted because you're going to be an operator. So it does actually work. It's just you've got to realise you've got to use both columns.
Yeah.
No, I think we were saying in the developer function we would be C on 3, not in a legal entity function as the operator as well. So we weren't. So the consultation we were talking about wasn't as in the business's role as an occupier. It was in the business's role as a developer.
Right at the very beginning, prior to operations.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. So even if I was a developer that wasn't going to operate, I'd expect to be consulted on design.
I understand. Yeah, of course. Yeah, right, of course. Okay.
Richard, sorry, and apologies if I missed this. I joined a little late, but just I have been involved with the roundtables, but not this particular exercise. Just something in terms of kind of context. I think something that's just needs to be watched with this RACI method is just, I guess, almost sort of setting a context around obligations. So, for example, if you consider this discussions in the context of building contracts, responsibility, accountability, consultation, informing, all mean one thing. If you consider this discussion in the context of the regulatory reform order, it's going to be slightly different because the client or building owner has responsibilities legally that are kind of the end game for all of this. So I think positioning this, the discussion in its context in almost like the timeline of a project, I think is going to be important, both to the exercise and then the meaning of whatever the output is downstream.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, George has contextualised this in some detail throughout.
Okay.
I don't know that I would be able to add anything to that, really.
Right. Okay.
To be honest.
So we're thinking about, I think we're thinking about this in the context of project procurement as opposed to a client's ultimate legal responsibilities. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that I think makes sense.
Yeah.
Because as you rightly say, if the operator is the client from the outset, then their responsibilities on this matrix will change over time.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is dynamic, and that's one of the great challenges to the sector at the moment, because you pick one difficulty in safe evacuation. Well, during the design stage, you might think that the design team are organising a design proposal that delivers safe evacuation. Client might transfer the responsibility for that design to a main contractor through the D&B contract, but it's coming right back at them as the building owner and a responsible person. Capital R, capital P downstream under the legally as a building owner.
I'm finding myself wondering if we were to produce this matrix again, I think we'd probably reorder the columns. So you might want to try and link together the kind of client column with the operator column in the same way that you might like to not combine, but have them side by side, so it's clear that that's the client organization. But I'm wondering, in terms of the descriptions, whether you could sequence the descriptions in a way that kind of describe the risks as you go through the process. So there are risks that you're trying to manage as part of the design process. There are risks that you're trying to manage as part of the install process, and then there are risks that you're trying to manage as part of the operational process. And I wonder if you were to sequence the descriptions in that way, in that kind of timeline, whether that would visually kind of tell the story in a better way.
Yeah, that could quite possibly be the case. I got this on my laptop yesterday morning.
Yeah,
I'd never seen it before, and I didn't know what race he was. So
yeah. You thought it was a 70s pop ground, didn't you?
I hope so. I know is race is some of my friends.
Yeah, and listen, Richard, this isn't a criticism. I guess what we're saying is that this document might need to go through an iteration in order to be meaningful.
I think for this, I think that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. But we are where we are for tomorrow.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do though is trying to manage to
simplify this as much as we can, because I'm all for simplification. Simplify this as much as we can, the process as much as we can, so it's dead easy for tomorrow.
Yeah. But it's interesting because maybe it's this conversation that would be better tomorrow, rather than to try and go down the columns and fill out the R's, the A's, the C's, and the I's. I don't know. I just put it out there.
David, you could well be right, but I've got no chance of that happening.
I mean, with this, you can fulfill a number of roles simultaneously. So you need to sort of define what that role is doing. So, yeah, as you say, you could be a client and the operator, but essentially those are two separate roles. And as an operator, you will do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
As a client or developer, you are expected to do X, Y, and Z. So they are distinct from one another, but depending on which role you are trying to fill at a particular time will determine what you're responsible for or not, essentially. So I think the distinction between the roles is needed, but you might need to say what each of those roles is supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So if you could just facilitate that conversation tomorrow, Paul, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So I'm basically saying we're the development team. This is we've procured it this way. So we're thinking of ourselves, as at this point in the process, we're not yeah, this is what we've got to do to make sure that the operational side has all the information, has the tools to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
And that's the way I was thinking anyway.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I think let's not overcomplicate it.
But if something, let's say, okay, so the operation, we haven't provided the information to the operational side. So notionally, you're sort of saying, well, as the development side are negligent in some way. So you are kind of responsible, or do you know what I mean? You are,
yeah.
But then the development team could say, well, the developer didn't provide us with that information. But it's that kind of, yeah, okay.
Yeah, all right. I mean, I think it will be important that people understand that this is a work in progress. This isn't being presented as this is an initial.
We're having a go at it. Yeah.
I mean, Scott will know the number of iterations we went through with. He did some massive work as the very first fire safety work streams, and we ended up having what was it, 13 further of those before we got something that was an output, which was never considered to be finished. It's dynamic and ongoing.
Yeah.
This is a look at
any number of exercises to decide what the exercise needs to be.
Yeah, okay, so this is, to think of it more as this is work in progress, and this is demonstrating how we're going about trying to address this.
Exactly. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not like an exam where we're going to fail if we don't do it right.
It's not anything like that, and it's not just the tick box. We could have not populated this at all, obviously, but it just makes it easier if there's some sort of guidance there.
Yeah, sure.
And hopefully quicker. Yeah. It's something to argue about or agree to, as opposed to discuss for 20 minutes, because we haven't got 20 minutes to discuss anything.
Yeah, so again, it's understanding the conversations that you want to park for another time and those that you actually want to
absolutely
tomorrow. Yeah.
It's very everything we've done on this has been online, so it's been very easy because we record it. Then we started realizing, we should get transcripts. And now, as you've seen, when we get a transcript, we get it written up and highlight minutes taken from the transcript. So there's a proper record of the meeting. But obviously, at this meeting tomorrow, there won't be a proper record because there's nothing, it's only being recorded. So it's going to be a very interesting animal that comes. So the outputs are going to be minimised because of that. Anyway, it's going to be a question of what notes are taken. It's more, as I say, it's more a question of showcasing our thinking and our methodology as anything else, really.
So do you want to keep working down the list?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I just need to get into my head how the thought process that.
Yeah, let's take another one, just at random rather than work through. Right, poorly designed cause and effect at the outset. That's a risk for fire alarms and fire detectors. Now we've got you down that you'll be consulted on that, but nothing more.
I agree that we would be consulted,
but nothing more than that. Now, how about the difficulty in safe evacuation? Now, you would be accountable for that. Would that be a reasonable?
No, I think that's the difficulties if it's designed and delivered right. Is that because it's how are the difficulties coming about?
It's a bit vague, isn't it?
Yeah.
What does it mean? So
you would be accountable. I mean, ultimately, that's.
It depends why.
Ultimately, as a client procuring a project and there was a problem, the direction, a client's going to be held accountable for that.
So because the reasons might be design related, because the reasons might be management related.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the client would take the accountability for that, wouldn't they?
Yeah. And.
But I think I changed some of the C's to R's further across the page, but.
And again, this might be where the accountable is actually with the client as an operator, as opposed to the client as the.
Yeah.
In that.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it? The client could be actually not the developer. It could be the person who's actually operating the building at that stage.
You know, and again, this is at the point the building is in use, it's the operator who's got that responsibility, which is why they're so reliant on everybody ahead of them getting it right, so they can, so it can work and it can be successful based on the good work preceding their accountability.
Okay.
So I think we're responsible there, aren't we?
Well, this is where I think again, they kind of, I think the language in the legislation is responsible person. I think that in the context, I read it in the context of a RACI analysis, I think it's accountable, which is that slight conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Accountable meaning you're
stops with you.
Stand up and face it.
Yeah, you've designed it. Well, we're assuming that it's designed wrong and it's not delivered right. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Because we have we not informed the operations department of how it should happen correctly?
Well, FRAs, everything that sits under the regulatory reform order is a client duty. And ultimately with building and use, these are client duties. Albeit you're obviously relying on a supply chain to get you to a place where you can discharge your responsibility.
Yeah, I guess. All right. So it's just, again, it's this kind of nuance between development role and client as the, and there's some of the where I'm thinking, we haven't done something collectively as a client because of maintaining things in use, and so it's having to work out what this.
I mean, to my mind, actually, I think I see it quite straightforwardly. The client, whether they're the developer or whether they're the operator, that they are accountable for this.
Yeah.
So they're accountable for making sure that the building, as delivered, is safe to evacuate. So, all right. Yeah.
No, I get it.
Where I would challenge it is that the main contractor has got a responsibility and the designer has got a responsibility to design a building that is safe to evacuate.
Yeah, so we shouldn't end up at that stage.
You're not just consulting with those people; they are responsible for the design.
But I think the other thing you've got to watch out is essentially when you've gone through handover. That's when you're sort of giving the responsibility to whoever's operating the building. So, so if you are going to accept a building as being safe and that, that's where you've got to do your due diligence to make sure it is safe and you've got all these things. Once they hand it over to you, then, some of the responsibilities that they were building in through, designing it and everything else, that gets passed on because you have accepted that. So you have to watch out a little bit there, because at some point when we're operating the building, we are responsible to keep our clients safe. If we just get handed over stuff and we haven't done our proper checks, then that isn't really it's moved. That responsibility has moved on. So if we're interested in operations, then as you say, it's a responsible individual. They're the one who's going to get taken to court at the end of the day. But you might want to try and allocate blame, but then they can turn around and say, well, you checked it, you were happy with it, so why didn't you pick it up? That's where you have to mitigate the risks to say, if you're handing something over to me, I am aware of some of these risks might be in place. I am aware that I have to do tests and so forth. What am I doing to make sure that I can sort of safely operate it? So yeah, it's a risks during operation, but you need to do your diligence.
Yeah, I have to say I'm a bit confused by this, actually. And I know I'm not supposed to be, but I am. We're talking about fire alarm and fire detector systems, and things that compromise their working properly.
Yeah.
Well, I don't quite understand how safe evacuation or lack of safe evacuation stops a fire alarm and fire detector system working properly. That's got nothing to do with how they work properly. That might be.
I'm glad you said that, Richard. I was new,
that.
so I've been trying to be silent about it because I don't really.
No,
I'm obviously, but as you say, there was. I didn't really get that link, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, if the fire alarm wasn't working properly, right, it would be a hindrance to safe evacuation because nobody would know there was a fire. But I don't understand how safe evacuation affects whether the fire alarm works. I was supposed to say that, wasn't I?
I mean, you might be able to argue that if you've got a particularly large development, that you might want the alarms to work zonally, so that you've got the opportunity to evacuate parts of the building separately. So if you've got hundreds and hundreds of people trying to get out of a building at once,
yeah,
then you could argue that doesn't constitute a safe way of evacuating.
That would be safe evacuation not happening as a function, because of the fire alarm not being in the right place. The safe evacuation wouldn't be causing the fire alarm to be in the right place. These risks are supposed to be risks to a fire alarm not working properly.
Okay.
Not functions of a fire alarm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Understand.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. So this isn't a risk, is it?
No, it's not a risk. It's an outcome of a fire alarm working properly.
Yeah. No. Good point.
Okay. So shall we move on to another one?
Shall we do that?
Shall we? Let's do that. Okay. Where's one that you're accountable for? Okay, let's do this long one. Residential building. Cause and effect. When fire smoke detected in a communal area, tenants within the flats are being told to stay put or elsewhere to evacuate. No consistency.
But
again, is an effect. It's got nothing to do.
It's not a risk to the fire alarm working properly, is it?
So again, I'm not understanding that one. Disconnect between common parts and residential areas detection systems. That's that again, isn't it? I mean, there's one down here at number 24, power failure. That is obviously a risk to the fire alarm not working properly.
Yeah.
Change of layout without modification of the detector location. That could also stop the fire alarm working properly. It's not an effect of the fire alarm not working properly. Vandalism, number 15, will stop the fire alarm working properly. Okay, but you're not counted as. Oh, you are. You're okay. So you're accountable for vandalism. How do you feel about that? I can't.
Again, this is one where the client as the developer isn't accountable for vandalism. The operator is.
Yeah, this is
client as the operator.
So we come back to the client operator thing. Which,
yeah.
Given that there is an operator function, we have to assume that that's not including you as an operator. So you're a client developer, but not operator.
Correct.
So as a client developer alone, you're not accountable for that. Would you say?
No.
Yeah,
no, I agree.
Likewise, if you look at these 16, 17, 18, removal of detectors, that would obviously stop it working properly. Would you be accountable for that removal? You might be, depending on when it happened.
We should be consulted on any changes to any design that we've delivered. I'd say, the housing management department should, or operational services should, perhaps come back to us to say, can we do this? Although by that time we're probably moved on to other projects, but it will come back to the information that we've given to check whether it has any impact on the fire evacuation strategies and all this sort of thing, shouldn't it? Really? Yeah. So we would be consulted, I think. and something like
So
that.
consulted rather than being.
Yeah, the O&Ms that we've and the information.
As soon as you remove you from being part of the operations team, as soon as you're just purely developer, it knocks out a lot of your accountability for everything, doesn't it? Because by definition, you've handed it over, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, and we're responsible for handing over the right information and making sure that that information has gone to the right people and they're happy with it. But that's where, you know, the function ends, really.
Yeah.
You know, and we've commissioned everything correctly, and we can only do so much. You know, and we've got the right ERs, and you know, we've, you know, but we can't. That's where I've got these doubts in my mind. Sorry, so pardon me for, and that's where I need to get as clear as possible in my mind.
No, absolutely. I mean, listen, I'm sitting here pulling to pieces as well, aren't I?
No, it feels to me that, yeah, it feels to me to a certain extent. What we've really got here is three columns condensed into two. I think there's three different elements. There's developer as a function, which may or may not be part of the group that also is the client stroke owner in the long term, but kind of like, what are they doing as a function? There's the occupier as a function, which again may or may not be part of the business that actually owns the building and has ultimate accountability, because it might be a third party or it may not be a third party. And then there's that business itself. And the problem is that because the business itself kind of element, you know, the owner, I'll call it, or client, has been combined with developer, you've got lots of A's where actually that, in order to differentiate from the operator as an R, when actually you kind of need a third column. You need the, as I say, the operator might be a different party. So there, you know, I'm reading that as the people on the ground doing the day-to-day stuff, who might be doing the covering over, the painting over of the detectors, the removal of the detectors. You've got the developer who were involved on day one, but actually, if someone's painting over a detector in 3 years' time, it's nothing to do with the developer.
Absolutely.
To a certain extent, you know, and then you've got the owning body stroke client who is accountable at the end of the day for the painting over the detector, but might not be responsible because it might not be the operator, or certainly the operating elements might be different than, say, the asset management department or whatever.
So what's the best way of us doing this? Is it, do we narrow down the definition of what you as the development group are? Since there's an operational column anyway, we absolutely say, right, so for the purposes of this exercise, the development group is not taking responsibility or accountability for anything that comes under operations, because by this definition today on this exercise, development is not responsible for any operations stuff. Is that the easiest, most straightforward way of doing it?
Again, it's going to what you hand over. So, as
I
think Paul said, you've got to make sure you hand over the right plans and things. So if your plan doesn't show particular walls or something, you know, it'd be stupid for the operator to take it on. But essentially, what information have you got to throw over the fence to the operator to make sure that they can operate the building safely and that they can evacuate people? So, you know, you've got to be told what's in there, how often it's got to be tested and things, and then the operator's got to make sure that those things are in place, don't they?
Yeah. You know what? Let's go on to the next tab. I'll tell you why, because that's when we get into, because we're getting into responsibility. A lot of your responsibility being about the accuracy of the information you're handing over, whereas this tends to be this page seems to be more about operations than actually information. And since we're saying under the definition that that's probably not going to be you, let's look at the information element and see what you think about this. Right, so basically, firstly, do you agree with your classification? And as a developer, again, given the definition that you're not going to be operating the building, as a developer, what information do you require to fill your role as defined by these RACI rankings, if you agree with them, and where will you get it from? Now, if you look down, there's very little actually in this information one. Oh, it's all information. It's all you being informed.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking. Well, you just have to look at, run your eye down, and because we've only got a short amount of time, just to generally, yeah, rather than going through each point.
Yeah, that's just you. You need to be informed of all this stuff. Remember, we're talking about fire alarms. So on the basis of this one, your accountability.
Sorry, with the design, the designer wouldn't know what the serial numbers and things are. So again, it's you've got a design, but then you've got your as built, things like that. So if you're developing the site, you'll actually put things in which will give you who the manufacturer is and what the model number is and who the installer is. Is that not right? Or
so you would be as.
Oh no. So no. Ignore that. Sorry, I just got that totally wrong in my head. Sorry.
So David, what do you think? It's as a developer under our narrowly defined definition of developer for the purpose of this exercise, would that be right? You don't actually have any responsibility in terms of information for that fire alarm.
We typically are the conduit through which it goes. So as this matrix suggests, most of the information, the contractor is accountable for providing that information contractually.
Right. Yeah.
And typically they would get that from their trade contractors, which is why they're here as being responsible.
Sure.
What I'm thinking is that for some of these things, cause and effect being one, as the developer, we might be consulted on that stuff. But in terms of the information itself, we are simply the recipients of the information.
Yeah.
In the same way that our operation teams then become the recipients of the information.
Your role's totally passive in this.
Yeah, and what does it say against operations? Sorry.
Operations. Sorry, let me just scroll up. The operations is consulted.
Well, I'm not even sure that they would be consulted. I think in terms of the information that they are simply informed. You know, here is the asset data. These are the assets. These are the components. These are the model numbers. These are their serial numbers. This is the warranty information. So they are recipients of information. I wouldn't expect them to be consulted about the information necessarily.
Yeah. But certainly from your point of view, from your guys' point of view, so basically, Paul, that's a slam dunk, that information one, isn't it? It's just a compromise one at the beginning for the first one.
Yeah.
You're going to knock a lot of that out the ballpark because you're not defining yourselves as being responsible for operations, because there is an operations column.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's have a look. Should we have a look at another one?
Yes, please. Just keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. Just let me. Sorry, I've got to go back to my email. Go on, Dave.
No, I just think, you know, we're a multi-headed client. So if I was sat in the asset management team, I would be looking at our development team and would think that they were accountable. You know, because but in the bigger picture, as I say, we simply act as conduits. So I think it is more appropriate for the contractor to be accountable.
I've can I make a general observation and then ask a question? My general observation, looking at these two tabs, kind of probably for the first time this morning, is that I find it much easier to fix the RACI ratings for information than I do for risk.
Yeah.
And I guess what it makes me think is that risk is dynamic and needs to be managed. And it might be that responsibility for information can be placed with more certainty.
Yeah.
And that is probably one of the keys to managing risk.
Yeah.
And I just, my question was, I wondered if others have the same feel, just looking at the two tabs.
Without a doubt, without a doubt, and I guess the importance of that statement is for the purposes of tomorrow. If you've only got 30-40 minutes, to what extent you start with this page just to take people through the methodology rather than getting embedded in the risk stuff. Maybe it'll be a simpler.
Well, I spoke to George this morning and I said, well, let's just focus on information rather than two, because they won't have time.
Yeah.
But he said, no, we've got to do the compromise, because that's about the risk, which it sets the context for the information.
Yeah.
If you haven't got the context, you don't know what information you need. You ask somebody a question, he's put this in one of his emails. You ask somebody, what information do we need for this or that? And without question, 99% of the time, they'll say, it depends. And it depends on the context. Hence, the need, the context to be put in place or to be in the discussion prior to determining what information is required. Which I
think all of that is true, Richard, and it would be good if George was part of this conversation, because I think he's just being unrealistic about what he thinks.
Sorry, David.
40 minutes.
I should have said he does send his apologies. He's doing a presentation at 040 at DCW, literally as we're talking.
Richard,
and as Dave said, the operators would look at the development team and say, you're responsible for not letting us know something.
And actually, since you've made that point, I've been reflecting, and actually I think as the developer or the development part of the organisation, we are responsible, because even though it's the contractor's accountability to provide it, I think it's the developer responsibility to check the information as best they can and to pass it on to the asset team in a format that is appropriate. So I don't think as the developer we're just informed. I think we do have a responsibility to make sure that the information is
correct and enough, and keep going back to them. Yeah, and keep going back.
Should we just look at this other one, because on this one is fire doors, because there are a few on here where you are held responsible.
But it's where you say what information do you need. So you say what information do I need to manage your risk for fire doors? You know, that they're working properly and so forth. What as a developer, what do I need to check?
Exactly.
Hand over to the owner. So, but the context is the actual asset type that you're looking at to make sure that it can be used properly in a building.
Yeah.
You know. So that is the context pretty much, and then you look at your information tab to make sure you've got all the bits of information that you need to know. You know, how often do you need to inspect it? Is it made of the right materials? Have we checked that? Or can we tell the owner that? Or the operator?
Again, the information is all informative or consultative. So let's look at the compromise side.
Can I just say, just to build on Christine's point, because I think she summarised it quite nicely. These lists are far too long. Nobody's going to use them. You know, there'll be great documents and they'll get produced, but people will look at this and go, really? You know, you got 70 odd things you want me to check on a fire door. It's not going to happen. So
again, it's when you looked at those lists, you said they weren't just listing the risks, it was listing what happens as well.
Yeah,
so as you said, with the fire alarms not working, that's got nothing to do with
I need to make a point on that.
So that's not the risk, is it?
No, I need to make a point on that. Remember, these lists, they're not all for developers, David.
I understand.
No, these lists combine the requirements for 6-7 stakeholders. They're just all on one table.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I take your point. I still think they're too long.
Yeah.
There's a really there's a real conundrum, I think, facing the sector, actually, just as we kind of grapple with the new legislation, new requirements. this sort of bottom-up view, looking at the detail, is just completely overwhelming, and probably unmanageable, and therefore possibly unrealistic. And then the kind of the top-down view, or which is really just a very simple question: is something safe? Is a building safe? Is that is really sort of binary. I say very simple. So it's how do we find a process that kind of manages the detail up to a very, very simple answer. Now, in our business, for example, we've run a number of pilot safety case reviews, and they're just not getting to this level of detail now. And they're obviously they tended to be existing buildings, so you don't have the opportunity to generate the data set from first principles as we will have in the future. But still, the level of acceptance is being calibrated at a completely different level to these bottom-up discussions. And I think there's a real challenge to find a process that connects the two.
Yeah, no, that's really good context, Scott. Thanks.
So again, it's where you've got your risk management. So if you're an operator, you want to be able to mitigate risks. You want to check fire doors and inspect fire doors. As a developer, you want to check that the fire door is made of the right material, possibly so it will do what it's been built for, rules and so forth, and all those fittings are right. So essentially, you've got different interactions with that fire door to reduce the risk, but for the operator, they just want to do the inspections. They should be assured that the fire door is made out of the right material as specified for the building. So it's a sort of a slightly different thing.
Yeah.
If that material's not right, then the owner can come back to you at some point and say, you told me these fire doors were that. So I keep on hearing people who do surveys of building where they say something's been made out of something, and then they check the wall, knock a hole in the wall, and that's not true. So if you look at that scenario, it's like, well, why didn't you put the right insulation in or something? Why wasn't that checked? So that's the information you've given us, but it's not right. So you haven't done your checks, so you passed this over incorrect information.
Yeah.
They could be doing all their checks, but if it's the wrong material and it goes whoosh, well, what are you going to do?
Yeah,
that's fair.
So let's have a look through a few more things on the list and just see if we can get more. Okay, number 5. Risk of human intervention on ancillary assets, such as smoke detectors, impacting on asset performance.
So again, how do smoke detectors affect fire doors? That's what I say when the list's being too big. This is a fire door list, and you're talking about smoke detectors.
Ancillary assets, Christine.
So
how does the risk of intervention on something associated with that fire door affect that performance?
I think the connection is a little bit abstract. If you calibrate the list at that level, you could put anything in. You could have any impact. I think Christine's point is correct. That you want to sort of tramline the asset to a reasonable degree.
Okay.
If there's an issue with the smoke detector, deal with that in the smoke detector list.
Okay.
I mean, whichever way you cut the cake, though, the client developer is not accountable for it.
No, that's fine. Well, on the note, the email I sent out this morning to the leaders, one of the options was, is this relevant to you in the first place? Basically, I mean, should the information be required in the first place? So in that case, in the risk of in the case of that one on the ancillary assets, you would say no.
Yeah.
What about risk of information on an individual asset being incomplete, inaccurate, or absent? Would you be accountable for that?
I think the main contractor is accountable. I think we're responsible.
Yeah, the responsible seems to be more the stock answer.
So it's just responsibility on that one.
Yeah, responsible for checking it, responsible for passing it on.
What
Which
about?
I think I'm sorry to go back to it, but I think as a general point, it's going to be very, very important to be absolutely 100% what responsible and accountable mean.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's what, and that's.
Because I think we're even in this discussion, we've flip-flopped a little bit on our interpretation of.
Yeah, you've got the fire regs terminology, and you've got the RACI terminology.
Yes, yeah, you're.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important. A very, very good point, because at the end of the day, you've got to, we've defined down a bit what they mean by developer. Well, we need to define down all of the parameters before you even start, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, for the purpose of this exercise, until that's defined down for us, we'll work on the basis of accountable and responsible being interchangeable. Okay.
Can't do that.
That's scary.
You can't do that, otherwise there's no point.
That's scary. Yeah.
They definitely can't.
Well, all right. Okay. Well, give me a definition we want to work with.
So, in my view, the way I read it and understand racing is the responsible. I think is having connection to the activity of production. You know, producing a document or a design. So you're responsible with its authorship, I guess. Accountable might be Scott Sanderson as an architect I have commissioned a design from Scott. I'm a building owner. Legally, I'm accountable for the safe operation of that building. That's where accountability comes in.
So accountability is a bigger responsibility than responsibility.
It's where the buck stops. Where does the buck stop if there's a problem?
It's fault. It's fault. It's the word fault. I keep thinking is accountable. That's
Yes.
what I identify in my mind.
Liability.
You're sort of responsible, but you know, yeah. At the end of the day, yeah, you're it's not quite as high an accountability.
Yeah, accountability is where that's the legal accountability. That's what we're doing.
Right, yeah, that's the way I would understand it. And just, Richard, sorry, just to explain the comment, maybe if it wasn't clear earlier, the slight potentially the potential for confusion using this method in a fire safety context is often the word responsible is used, meaning accountable, in a fire safety context.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I've never come across this before, and if you look, the RACI diminishes, so I assumed responsible was the most onerous.
Well, then that's my interpretation, and you know, I in a way I could be corrected, perhaps.
No, I'm not.
It's just no, and it's just about, I think what matters is clarity and consistency in this.
Yeah. I mean, it makes more sense to me what you've said, that accountable, if you're accountable, that means you're accountable.
Yeah.
That's
you
where
are the one.
Yeah, absolutely. But that, as you say, that needs to be very clearly defined before the meeting tomorrow. So, Paul, when you start your meeting, that's obviously what you need to do.
This was what I was grappling with yesterday. The responsible and accountable thing. And how do I... you know, and I was wondering whether I had enough, it's all the level of expertise, you know, and but it's great. This is comforting that we're talking, and yeah. So okay, gonna have to then. So I just want to be absolutely clear. This is the divide between those two. Okay. So can you just say again which is the most highest in terms of this exercise? You know,
accountable
level.
Yeah.
Accountable or responsible?
No, accountable.
Okay, that's what I've got.
It's who you could prosecute. So if
that's
the legislation you've got, is that accountable?
Yeah, that's accountable.
Okay.
And ideally, sorry.
In Care Quality Commission, you had responsible people, responsible manager, and those are the people you used to prosecute. So whoever in the legislation is a person you can prosecute, they're the ones who's supposed to make sure that.
And they're called responsible.
I think you had a responsible individual, and that essentially they're the people who had ultimate accountability. So I think it was, but yeah. So you had registered managers and responsible individuals. Just going by that piece of legislation, I know it's a different sector, but yeah. But I haven't checked what it is here. So the building owner is a responsible person.
The building safety managers, I know they're not doing that now, but when we thought they were going to be doing building safety managers and they were going to be responsible and accountable, what were they?
So it's like if you had if I look at that analogy for health and social care, you had responsible individuals, so you undertake particular activities which you've got legal responsibility over. Because you might have lots of different locations, you can't be every place at once, in which case that's why you had registered managers. So if they aren't doing their job, so they have a certain amount of delegated responsibility because they're sort of handling the day-to-day operations, so to speak. So if you had building managers, that would almost be analogous to a registered manager in those terms. But then the nominated individual was the one who said, who's the overall building owner. So it's an analogy, but I can't say it totally applies here.
Within the sector, there were building safety manager who was going to be the person who would be prosecuted.
Well,
right?
It could be both. So you could have more than one person. So it depends. I can't remember if because the provider's the one who sorts out who your building safety manager is. So if they haven't done some things, it still could go back to the overarching person who's put that building manager or building safety manager in place. If you're following that analogy.
Saying, Christine, you're saying that the most onerous position is being responsible.
No, it's not. It's definitely accountable. There's no doubt.
Unanimous on accountable.
In life, it's if you take away any individual example and just in life, it's accountable.
Right.
That is the higher power. The person who is held to account.
Yeah, all I'm trying to do is get this defined for Paul for tomorrow. So Paul saying
I'm more comfortable with that accountable as the legal buck stopping and the responsible as some sort of role that's important in making sure, but it's not quite the illegal buck stopping thing.
Exactly. They have responsibility to fulfill their function and do their job, but they're not legally accountable. That's the accountable person.
Yeah, so that I'd be much happier in if that.
Great. Well, mate, if you at the beginning of the meeting, if you just define that, it takes a minute, and then everybody knows where you're talking from.
Yeah. So I've got to just say we've got to look at this from a development team point of view, in our role, as opposed to operations, because we have got the two different, and we've got to look at this and just define responsible and accountable, and then off we go.
Yeah. Exactly. Just define those two, then you've set your parameters, and the discussion follows on from that. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be going all over the place. And that will also enable you to knock a lot of stuff out of those lists.
Yeah, and on the information tab, most of it's going to be informed or consulted in actual fact, isn't it? Rather than
you can just scroll through those, can't you? Because the main
but there might be one or two where we might pick up that might be something else, but but so there does need to be you have to keep an open mind. But okay, so but it's on the so the first tab, the compromise tab, is important to go through first still.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, I understand where George is coming from. What I would suggest to you, maybe that first one we did, the fire alarms, where you've got no any kind of responsibility except to be informed of the information. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe do that one reverse. Do the information first, so they see that there's an easy one that you can flick through. And then go.
I'll start off with fire alarm then. In that case,
do that one, and then when you go on to compromised, it's not going anywhere anyway. So you're not losing any context from George's point of view. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then do the others how he wants them doing with the context first.
Okay.
I hesitate to ask this question, Paul, but are you comfortable?
I'm feeling the pressure a bit, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Who else is going to be there tomorrow?
Scott, are you going?
I'm planning to go, yeah. I'm not.
Scott, do that, so you'll be fine.
I'll chip in some
Not the pussycat in a meeting, I'll tell you.
So, are all the round tables are just happening in one space, I assume, are they? Or?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm feeling a bit better now, I have to say. This, much needed this session, so thank you.
Yeah, well, no, thank you. It's I'm
yeah, absolutely. It's no,
sorry, sorry that I can't make it.
Okay.
It is so. Just with that in mind, Paul, and I recognise you're the man in the frame here. Is there anything you need out of the last few minutes of this conversation?
I think we've gone through.
Okay.
Clear it. I don't think there is anything at the moment. Just in case, it's just knowledge, knowing that people are there. If I suddenly have a worry this afternoon about something that occurs to me, that people are going to be there, that I can contact, that sort of thing, and then just getting there tomorrow, saying my piece, and then off we go. And all I can do is, I guess, is try to, as you say, it's work in progress.
Yeah.
It might not totally come off, but we're having a go, and that's the way I'm seeing it.
Just remember that by having you there doing this, it's going to be a better outcome than if you weren't there at all.
Oh God, yes, absolutely.
So go. So whatever you do, it'll be better than what it could.
Okay, well, thanks for that.
And you're not going to the Lion's Den; they're all our friends.
Yeah. If you do think of something and you just want to bounce something around, then drop me an email, give me a call, and happy to bounce it around with you, Paul.
All right, thank you very much. Because things will come out of this, and I'll look back at this, and then something else might crop up. Yeah, so thanks for that. That's comforting. Thanks.
All right, buddy. And at the end of the day, whilst I've got an opinion, you're the one that's going to be chairing the session. So it's important. It's yours, and you own it, and you're comfortable with the things that you're going to say. So
yeah. And I've got to set, so I'm setting the contacts, okay. Development, D&B contacts is the other thing, I've got to say.
Yeah, I think so. And maybe a lot of the things that we've spoken about this morning, if they come up, that they'll be familiar to you. You'll know these are questions that we've asked ourselves. So, I'm sure you'll have a response to them.
Right, okay.
You want to watch that Scott's answer, and he's the one that's got the difficult questions,
yeah,
I would suggest.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just find some back.
Yeah.
All right. I'm conscious of time, guys. I'm glad you found it useful, Paul, and I wish you every success tomorrow. I'm sure it'll go well.
Yeah, good. No, that's much better.
In the meantime, if you need anything, just give us a shout.
All right then. Thank you very much. Thanks, David. Thanks for your.
Nice to see you all. Thanks for everyone for your contributions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. See you later. Cheers, bye bye.